Welcome to the Orlando Sentinel's interview for the GOP primary in the Seminole County election supervisor race. In August, school board member Amy Pennock, a certified fraud examiner and auditor, will be challenging incumbent supervisor Chris Anderson, a former sheriff's deputy who was appointed to his first term by Governor Ron DeSantis in 2019 and elected to retain the post in 2020. Mr. Anderson declined our invitation to participate on the advice of his counsel, so we will be spending time with Ms. Pennock. The winner of this race will face Democrat Deborah Polalian in November. And Julie Anderson will have our first question.
Thank you. So some Floridians seem to have a crisis of confidence in elections integrity. What additional measures should the supervisor's office take to prove to residents that their ballots are safe and secure?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges with any issues is communication. And what I would like to do when I get into office is to really work to communicate out to our constituents to make sure that they understand our process is safe and secure. I can't be at all places at all times and talk to all people. So I think creating an ambassador program of people who are either poll workers, poll watchers, staff, volunteers to help learn that message, help learn the process, and then help share that out into the community so that we really can make sure the community understands that Seminole County is safe and secure and that we are the leaders in election integrity.
Thank you. Many people feel that elections officials have a duty to reach out to qualified voters and demographic groups that underperform in terms of voter registration or turnout. But the opposite view to that is that this is basically putting a thumb on the scale of an election and that voters have the majority of the responsibility to get themselves registered and to vote, with nonprofits and political parties picking up the job of outreach. How do you feel about targeted outreach? And if you support it, what kinds of outreach would you consider?
I wholeheartedly believe in targeted outreach as part of the supervisor of elections job. You're hired to run elections. You're hired to get people registered to vote. And part of it is getting nonprofits and parties to help register people, but it's also to get yourself out in the community and make sure that you're engaging with constituents so that they understand the importance of voting. Registration of high school seniors when they get pre-registration of high school seniors so that when they turn 18, they're fully registered and they can start voting in the next election is a part of that process and something that I learned when Mike Ertel was in the office and will continue to do that when I'm in office. But to make sure we're going out to organizations that have big events and making sure that we have a presence to get people registered. So yes, we need those nonprofits, we need the churches, we need the party groups, but I will lead the charge with that. It's ultimately the buck stops with me, and that's my responsibility. So I want to get what is being done currently and help expand that with bringing other organizations and again, the ambassador program.
Thanks for that answer. Do you believe the state is using reliable information to identify and purge inactive or unqualified voters now that it has dropped out of the electronic registration information center system? As supervisor, what would you do about this?
Based on what I have studied and learned, I think the state of Florida leads the charge in really working hard to make sure we have a good voting process. I think there's still some challenges with cleaning the voter rolls and not knowing the entirety of why we left Eric. I'm not certain that the state is using all the avenues that we can to make sure every eligible voter is registered and every voter is an eligible voter. And so I would like to continue to work advocating with our state legislators and our federal legislators to make sure that we have a really good solid process to make sure we have clean voter rolls and we don't have issues like maybe we've seen in some of the other states.
Thank you. What more can the Seminole Elections Office do to assure that former felons have the information they need to restore their voting privileges?
Oh gosh, that is, again, let's go back to communication and informing people. That can be a targeted marketing campaign, a targeted mailer to anyone who has come out of the system that has cleared their what they needed to do to get their rights restored to vote. They've done what the law said that they can do to get their rights restored. So let's make sure that we can get them back in the voting booth. And if that's creating an awareness program, a targeted mail program with the DOJ or the sheriff's departments to make sure we're informed when someone has completed that process so that we can get communication to those people. Let's work on that. It takes collaboration with a lot of community level officials, state level officials. And so I think my history of great collaborative relationships will help us make sure that we're targeting everyone that's eligible to vote.
Thank you. The supervisor's office in Seminole County has seen a few glitches in the past several years, including leaving a question off the Oviedo ballot and recently needing to mail duplicate ballots to voters in Castleberry because an instruction was left off of the ballot. What could the supervisor's office do? What would you do to create a fail-safe to keep small things like this from happening?
Great question. You mentioned in my introduction that I'm a forensic accountant, so details matter. Trust but verify. I always tell people when I'm talking to them, when you're teaching your kids to brush their teeth, you send them off to brush their teeth and then you verify that they did that. Well, we need to do that in our workplace too. And so when it comes to getting to the printout of the ballot, I would like to make sure I have a physical sign off from every municipality, whether it's the mayor or the city manager or the county manager, to make sure we have included the information that they have requested to be on the ballot. We've seen challenges with, again, vote by mail issues, party affiliation showing, having really strong, knowledgeable staff in the office that make sure they understand the legislation, that make sure they understand the process, and make sure that they understand the systems so that when we're sending off a ballot to be printed, we can't blame the mail house. We can only accept blame on ourselves. And so I will be double checking. I have checklists that I use in my daily and monthly work life. And you can guarantee that we will have a lot of checklists in the SOE's office to make sure that we are not leaving stuff off the ballot, making mistakes, and we are adhering to the laws that we're required to adhere to.
Thank you very much for that answer. Wanted to switch over a bit to safety. What additional measures would you recommend to ensure the safety of poll workers and voters at early voting sites and on election day?
Safety is just paramount in every day of life. Having been on the school board for the last 6 years, my really strong relationship with the sheriff's department and the municipal police departments have given me really kind of a leverage to be able to use the resources that they bring to the table to make sure that we're either getting training or we're getting resources at all of the locations to make sure that not only the poll workers or employees feel safe, but anyone that's coming to vote to the polls or any candidate or their volunteers or who are coming to wave signs and encourage people to vote are all safe. So it's not just safety of the people who are working at the polls, but we have to look at it in its entirety and make sure that we're addressing all of that. I would like to make sure we have a really good, robust training program for red flags and awareness, similar to the See Something, Say Something that you hear the sheriff talk about, you hear school boards talk about. Let's make sure that we're educating everyone, staff, poll workers, volunteers, candidates. I think that's probably a missing piece right now, is we're not training the candidates and volunteers on safety matters. And let's make sure that we're doing a really good, robust training program. And then if we have areas of concern, or if we're hearing of areas of concern through the sheriff's department, let's address that by having additional staff or security on site to make sure that that voting process is smooth and safe for everyone that's there.
That's a technology question. So are you satisfied with the technology Seminole uses to tabulate votes? If not, what changes or improvements would you make?
I have studied the tabulation machines that we use, the ES&S versus the Dominion, and I think the ones that we have are a lot safer, a lot have less mechanical issues, less technical issues. You know, it's technology. We're always going to have a blurb here and there, but let's try to anticipate those. Let's make sure that we're addressing and thinking through every kind of issue that might come up, so that when it comes up, we're prepared and we can handle it and respond as quickly as possible. People talk about wanting to do hand counting day of, and you know, we're in 2024 and technology is here. It's not going anywhere. I think the tabulation machines are here to stay. I like them. I want to keep them, but I do want to expand post-election audits. Right now, you're only required to do one precinct and one race, and I would like to do more of a post audit, which would be hand counting audit or similar type of process, but really to bring my auditing skills and have a greater sample size to make sure that we're looking at a hand count that justifies what went through the machine.
Thank you. It is now possible to translate most of the supervisor's website into Spanish, but there's no option for people who speak other languages. Do you think the office has a duty to make ballots and voting information available in languages other than English, or other than English and Spanish?
If you go to my website, you'll see you can translate it into any language. And I think, yeah, we don't just have English and Spanish speakers in our community. We have a lot of different languages. And if your primary language isn't English, it's hard for you to make good choices when it comes to anything, including voting. So let's start with the website. We need to do an overhaul with the website. I think there's some transparency issues. It's hard to work around. There's missing information or challenges to get to the information very easily. And I really want to make sure that we are transparent and sharing the information as quickly and as soon and effectively as possible. And effectively means availability in all different kinds of languages. Seminole County is required to print the ballots in Spanish because we have met the population threshold. I am not familiar enough with how easy or how costly it would be to print it in different languages, but I definitely think that we need to be ready for what's coming up, because we are the melting pot, the United States, and especially Florida. A lot of people are moving here every day. And while we love the English language, we also have to meet people where they are, and their language barrier can't be a barrier to vote. And I want to make sure we're breaking down the barriers.
We have been so efficient with our time that we've gone through all our questions, but I did want to ask you one more, and that is about the use of print on demand technology, which is something that more and more counties are looking at, and that would address the language barrier as well. Is that something that you think it's time for Seminole to look at? And understanding that it might not be affordable for all of the precincts that you have to manage.
I understand that we are doing print on demand ballots currently. I'm not sure that it's doing it every precinct again, because I'm not that familiar with what's going on at every precinct, but it is available and it is being used in Seminole County. And yes, that would address the challenges with the language. We have to make sure that the systems that we are using in the Supervisor of Elections office can translate that correctly and efficiently, because sometimes you will see translation software incorrectly translate something because one language to another really isn't word to word translation. And so I want to make sure that whatever way we're delivering that ballot, that it's accurate, it's not missing information, it's not missing disclaimers, it's got the correct translation, so that, again, we're not creating a barrier or a questionable ballot that someone might be looking at and want to cast.
I'm going to sneak one more question in there. Have you spoken with any representatives or groups of disabled Seminole County residents about their questions with access? Are you satisfied with disability access to voting in Seminole County, including visually impaired and other disabilities that would be barriers to voting?
I have spoken to groups with disabilities, and it's a big challenge, not just in Seminole County, but it's a challenge everywhere. And I think that we can do better. Being on the school board, we have students with disabilities, and we really focus on that. So I think it gives me a really unique perspective to be able to make sure we're meeting them on their level and not creating barriers. It's wonderful that we have vote by mail that people can use with disabilities, or the elder population, or someone that may be traveling vacation or, stationed overseas, but that's not always their preferred way of voting. And so we want to make sure that the precincts that we are partnering with, the locations, have great access for anyone that wants to come in that may have a disability. I've heard challenges at some of the locations, and so we need to revisit those locations and make sure, again, we're not creating a barrier for anyone to be able to cast their vote. And so going back to the ambassador program, I want to make sure it's not just my friends, it's not just this party, it's not just that group. It is, this ambassador group really needs to kind of be an advisory commission that brings these concerns of disabilities or different language speakers, so that we're aware of them and we're addressing them and breaking down the barriers and making sure that we can get everyone in there that's eligible to vote, including, this group should have, felons who've restored their rights. Walk us through that process so that we can understand and help you when you get to the finish line, get registered to vote, and do it in a way that's a feel good.
Thank you very much. We have come to the point where we're going to ask you to make a closing statement in just a minute. But first, I wanted to remind everybody, we will be making an endorsement in this race. However, we urge voters to not rely just on what we have to say about the two candidates in this race, but what you discover yourself through looking at their social media, their websites, through forums in your community, and through our excellent coverage of this race. And take a look and ask yourself which candidate best represents your values, your standards for this very important office. And remember that the winner of this race will face Democrat Deborah Palladian in the November contest. So only registered Republicans will be allowed to vote in this race. So with that, I would ask Ms. Pennock to give us a brief pitch as to why she should be the pick for the election supervisor.
Thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity to do this interview. I have spent my life really building integrity as my backbone. I have a master's in forensic accounting. I'm a certified fraud examiner. And really, I look at things differently from the eyes of questioning everything and make sure that we are creating an environment that is safe, free, and fair, and doesn't include fraud. So what I bring to the table is integrity. I've shown this over the last 6 years in working on the school board. I have been able to work with people in all different parties, all different areas of the community. I have great collaborative relationships with the sheriff, with our state reps, with our local reps, the board of county commissioners. I have, in the course of my 6 years, missed one meeting because my daughter was getting inducted into Beta Club, and that was a priority. But I will show up to every meeting that I need to be at to make sure that I am advocating not only for the SOE's office, but for our community, to make sure that we are really building trust back into that office, and we are communicating so that everyone can say that we trust Seminole County's Supervisor of Elections office. We trust that our vote was cast in a safe manner. And whether we agree with the outcome or not, we can say that it was done with integrity, it was done fair and free of fraud. And check out Amy Pennock. Vote on August 20th or before. You can check my website out at electamypennock.com. Always open for calls, questions, texts. I'm on social media, and I look forward to the outcome of this election.
Thank you. We wish you best of luck